20 examples of Joe Biden's involvement in Hunter Biden's affairs for delusional Democrats. They keep telling us this new talking point that there is no evidence, not an iota of evidence, not a scintilla of evidence. And so today, to prove them wrong about this, we're going to go through a report from the Oversight Committee that says there are at least 20 bits of evidence that support their conclusion. And before we go into this, we'll make sure that those on the left understand the two types of evidence that are important: direct evidence and circumstantial evidence. So when they say there is no evidence, we can ask them specifically, what kind of evidence do you mean? Since you're talking about evidence, you mean like legal evidence, right? Why don't you tell us what type of evidence you're talking about? And of course, this is about two different tracks. The impeachment is not what the Democrats say it is. It's all just about a direct deposit payment into Joe Biden's bank account or something like that. We've got obstruction, we've got lies, and then we've got all of the allegations of Joe's direct involvement. And so we'll come back to that here in a minute. But just to be clear on this insane talking point that these guys have now distributed in their email newsletters or their text message groups or whatever, but this is a montage put together by Tom S. Elliott. He's over on Twitter, and this is a nice summary of exactly what they are doing out there. If you're not following Tom Elliott, make sure you're doing that. Great person to follow on the X. And here's what he says in this summary.
The president has been in politics for a long time, and I think, as he would say, he's seen a lot of malarkey along the way, but this might take the cake.
This is all smoke and no fire.
What a waste of time and money.
I don't see any probable cause here. There's just no evidence.
I have not seen any evidence.
There's no evidence of any crime at all.
No evidence so far that ties Joe Biden to any of this, at least nothing that they have brought forward and that we have seen.
Have you seen said evidence?
No, not a scintilla of evidence.
There is not a shred of evidence that President Joe Biden has engaged in wrongdoing.
No business dealings of Hunter Biden's or anyone's was discussed in these conversations.
I think they're making it up.
There is not a shred of evidence that President Joe Biden has committed an impeachable offense.
A substantial majority of Americans believe something which is not true.
There is not a shred of evidence that President Joe Biden has committed a crime.
You got to have a crime. Like you got to have some accusation you can make, and they don't really have anything right now.
I think the impeachment inquiry is absurd.
I think that that's absurd. It's ridiculous, of course.
This is part of the right wing's misinformation machine to try to confuse people.
Distract, distort, dissemble.
Confusion.
Right now, we're in the distract phase.
What Hunter Biden may or may not have done does not even come close to the level of legal drama that's facing the former president of the United States.
There's 91 criminal charges against Donald Trump right now, 13 criminal charges against Congressman Santos, who was just on the show a few moments ago. They have nothing to say about that. There are no charges against Joe Biden, and they want to impeach the guy.
Trump was impeached, so was Biden. Trump was investigated, so was Biden. There's corruption.
This is an illegitimate impeachment inquiry. Period. Full stop.
Full stop.
This could benefit President Biden.
Oh, really?
This could end up having ramifications for Republicans if voters who don't really want to see these kinds of inquiries all the time feel like this is going too far.
The American people want us to do something that will make their lives better, not go off on these chases and witch hunts.
Witch hunts from Chuck Schumer. So make sure you're giving Tom Elliott a follow on that for that beautiful montage. But you can see exactly what they're doing, right? The talking points have gone out. All of these lunatics just say the same old thing over and over and over again, like a broken record. But they say no evidence, no evidence, no evidence. Well, Comer has put together a nice summation of this. But before we hear from Comer and go into the actual report, I want to just pause and articulate these two different tracks so we can tease this out. And what the Democrats will try to do here is obfuscate this and just say that there's no evidence. But we've got to really break that down. What type of evidence are they talking about? And evidence to prove what, okay? It's what is the evidence being used for? It's not just regular evidence. We got to use it for something. And so when I think about the impeachment, there's two main tracks that we can talk about. Now, the one that is the most obvious, and we spend a lot of time here, is Joe Biden actually being involved with Hunter, right? Actually speakerphone calls, actually showing up at meetings, writing Devin Archer a letter saying, I'm great, I'm happy and thrilled that you're hanging out with my son now. Showing up to the golf events, getting the phone call from DC and all of those things. That's actual direct involvement. And this is what the Democrats say there is no evidence of. And we'll obviously smash that to bits here by going through this report where there's 20 plus examples of that, and we'll just hit the highlights there. But that's what we think about often, okay? Did Joe actually get the big check from the Price is Right for guessing the Burisma prosecutor right? Did that happen? But that's just one small component, and the Democrats are going to want very very concrete evidence here. They want the Venmo transaction. They want the bank account transaction or whatever. Otherwise, they're going to say it's just too far out there. It's too far removed. Whereas the Republicans, they're going to want a big hula hoop. They're going to want to expand it and say, no, this is evidence of this and it should show intent and they were colluding with these people, kind of like what Big Fanny is doing and connecting all the dots, right? All these overt acts that may not by themselves under RICO be a crime, but when you add them all up together under the totality of the circumstances of the crime, then you can bundle them together and say, oh, okay, there's enough evidence to support that, which is what we'll talk about. But this is just one component of this. Now, there's a whole parallel track in this impeachment process, in my opinion, that is focused on Biden's literal obstruction and his lies to America. Okay, so he basically lied to us, 50 times. Debate stage, talking about the 51 laptop letter, right? All of these things were lies about his involvement with Hunter. He communicated to us, and that was a dishonest thing to do. Now, you could make the argument that maybe that wasn't something he made under oath, that maybe that's not a high crime or misdemeanor or any of those things, but the obstruction certainly is. Now, if his son is being prosecuted by his own Department of Justice and the DOJ somehow conveniently evaporates the actual investigation, as has been told to us through the IRS whistleblowers, Shapley and Ziegler, that is another problem, right? That is obstructing his own Justice Department or obstructing justice in his own Justice Department. And that is something that we've also seen happen. We've got Garrett Ziegler telling us about that. I'm sorry, that's Marco Polo. Shout out to Garrett Ziegler, also from Marco Polo. And then we've also got Joseph Ziegler, the IRS whistleblower, and Shapley communicating about these obstructions. IRS whistleblowers, FBI special agent who was paid 6 figures from the FBI as an informant for years, told us about a lot of this stuff. But we also have Shapley's notes saying that Merrick Garland lied to us about what David Weiss, the actual prosecutor, was allowed to do. So we're going to go through all of that. These two tracks, we also have to ask ourselves what type of evidence is being presented. What the Democrats say, there's no evidence. There's not a shred, not one scintilla of evidence, they say. Well, we'll see. There's two different types. One is called direct evidence, and this is when a person has personal knowledge of the crime. Like they saw it, okay? I watched the person pull the knife out at that time. I could see it, I could observe it like an eyewitness. But also it could mean that it is just evidence which immediately points to the question at issue. That's from Georgia. There was another case. It says direct evidence directly links a person to a crime. It demonstrates the ultimate fact to be proved, right? Now we contrast that with what's called circumstantial evidence, also very important, and I'll give an example of this here. But circumstantial evidence is one that does not on its face prove a fact in issue, but it creates an inference of the thing that happened. So circumstantial evidence requires drawing an additional inference in order to support the claim. So here's one example that prosecutors use all the time in court. They'll say direct evidence is when you are outside on your front patio and you watch the snow hit the ground and you say there is now snow on the ground. You have direct evidence of that, okay? If you're called into court to testify about that, was there snow on the ground? Did you see snow on the ground out there, Mr. Witness? And they'll say, yes, I did. Well, how did you see it? How do you know? Well, I saw it. I saw it come down. And now that witness is testifying in court that I saw this thing happen, okay? That is direct evidence. I am a witness with personal knowledge of the commission of a crime or the weather, in this case, the snow falling on the ground, and I saw it with my personal senses. That is literally the definition of direct evidence, okay? And you can look this up on Cornell or anywhere else you want to look it up. That's direct evidence. Now, if one person observed any of this stuff, they're going to say that's enough. Circumstantial evidence also is the same thing. It's a different concept, but it's evidence that can be used in criminal cases, and this requires an inference. So the example with the snow is, if you're brought in and the question is, did it snow? You can't say, let's say you did not see it happen, but you were inside asleep. And so you're sleeping, you wake up the next morning, you go outside, there's snow on the ground. When you went to bed, there was no snow on the ground. You woke up, you went outside, guess what? There's snow on the ground. Did it snow? You can say, yes, I believe it did snow. Why? Because I was going to bed, there was no snow. I woke up, there was snow. You made an inference. You didn't see the snowfall, but you inferred that it fell, and you can make that conclusion. And so when you are brought into court, you can testify about that. And the defense can say, well, isn't it true? Isn't it possible that somebody could have brought over big dump trucks of snow and dumped it all over the ground? And you could say, yeah, it's possible. Did it happen? Well, I don't know. I didn't see that happen. So you just believe that it just fell out of the sky, didn't you? Yes, I did. And the defense then could maybe offer some evidence that somebody brought dump trucks out to dump it all over the ground, right? Now, either way, both types of evidence are used in criminal trials, which means it's either direct evidence of Joe Biden's involvement, which we've got plenty of because Joe Biden went to dinners, called on speakerphones, and did other things, including using pseudonyms and emails and all sorts of other things involved, but there's also people who can fill in the gaps. They didn't see the snowfall, but they can come out the next day and say, yeah, Hunter's call to DC was probably to Joe Biden. So now that we know what type of evidence is actually out there, and now that we know that there are these two tracks of the impeachment, obstruction and Biden's actual involvement, let's have James Comer bring us up to speed on exactly where we are now and how far we've come, uncovering all of the criminality from the Bidens.
Thank you, Chair Stefanik, and I appreciate Mr. Emmer letting me jump in here. We have a committee hearing that will begin shortly. I just want to kind of go back to where we were in January when we started this investigation. This was the narrative. The narrative was that the laptop, the president's son's laptop, was Russian disinformation. Hunter Biden was a legitimate business guy, just like Jared Kushner. No Biden ever took money from China, because that's what Joe Biden said. No money ever changed hands while Joe Biden was vice president. And I actually believe that.
I believe that too.
Joe knew nothing about his son's dealings, and Joe never met with or spoke with any of the foreign nationals who had wired the family money. All of those things have been proven wrong because of the Republican majority and our investigation.
I actually also believe that. I don't think we're going to find a bank transaction from Hunter to dad, memo, Burisma cut, 50% to Joe. That's never going to happen, obviously. But all of those other myths, all of those other lies have evaporated in the time that the Oversight Committee has been investigating this. And now they have dropped 20 examples, at least, of Joe Biden's involvement in the influence peddling scheme. And so here's what they tell us. They give us a couple samples of this thing. And they say in July 2023, we've got one bit of evidence. Devin Archer. Now there's 20 different of evidence here. We're not going to read through them all just in the interest of time, but I do want to hit the highlights and show you what's going on here. But in July, business associate Devin Archer described the following. Mr. Mondolfo asks Mr. Archer, they say, hey, Devin, you keep saying that the quote, the brand, but by brand, you mean the Biden family, right? And that brand is what, in your opinion? Was the majority of the value it was delivered from Hunter to Burisma? He says, well, I didn't say the majority, and I wouldn't speculate on percentages, but I do think that it was an element of it. Hunter was an element of it. So when you say the Biden family, sorry to cut in here, I just want to get a clarification. The Biden family, you aren't talking about Dr. Jill or anybody else, are you, Mr. Archer? You're talking about Joe Biden. Is that fair to say? A witness, a key witness. Yeah, that's fair to say. Mr. Archer is a person that Joe Biden wrote a letter to. Joe Biden took pictures with Mr. Archer on the golf club course, and he's got evidence now, direct evidence that we just learned about, personal knowledge that says that's fair to say. Listen, I don't think it's about, as you know, Joe directly, but it's fair. That's fair to say. Obviously, that brought the most value to the brand, okay? How is that not direct evidence? You have a witness who's been in literal conversations with Joe Biden many times, testifying from his own personal knowledge that Joe Biden is the brand that they are selling around the world. Devin also said that he was aware of at least 20 times when Biden was speaking on speakerphone with Hunter's foreign business associates. 20 times of these phone calls. Question to Devin. How many times would you say that Hunter Biden put his father on the speakerphone? Devin, who's a family friend for a long time, referenced his father being on the phone. How many times? Approximately? Well, the difference between an investor and a normal course of a day, it's a hard thing to speculate on, but they spoke every day. You know, he acknowledged that they spoke every day. Devin's talking about Hunter and Joe. And he would sometimes make it apparent that he spoke to his dad, and sometimes Hunter would put his dad on the speakerphone. But as far as quantifying the number, relative to the investors, I don't know. He says, well, okay, not necessarily investors, but with people who Hunter Biden was trying to either get business with or to make contacts with. How many times? He says, in my whole partnership, maybe 20 times. 20 phone calls! That's Devin Archer, who was there, personal knowledge, observing Joe Biden make a phone call on speakerphone to investors. It's literally direct evidence. Now, the Democrats would have you believe that this is all just insane, right? But this is a key witness that you would bring in, and he would testify. I was there. I saw it. And during those 20 times, did Hunter ever place his dad on the phone? Yes. There you go. What's he doing? Talking about the weather those 20 times with Hunter's business partners? More direct evidence that the Democrats don't even want to think about. In February 2014, so now, well, this is backing up a bit, Vice President Joe Biden dined with oligarchs from Russia and from Kazakhstan. They funneled millions of dollars to Hunter Biden. They said, question, Mr. Archer, I want to ask you about this. Going back to this, it would be what? Spring 2014 Cafe Milano dinner? He says, yeah, The spring of 14, yeah, the first one. And since we talked about it before the break, Devin, if you could just recap, can you say who was there at that meeting in 2014? He says, yeah, sure. It was Keynes Rakishev, Karim Mazimov, Yelena Baturina, a Russian oligarch who still has not been sanctioned because of Biden, possibly Yuri, Hunter Biden, Joe Biden. Oh man, look at that one. Joe Biden was there at the meeting, and possibly Eric Sherwin. I'm sure they just talked about the weather the whole time. It's a bunch of business people, Russian oligarchs and their business associate, Eric Sherwin. The duration of the time that Joe Biden stayed there, you said you couldn't recall, but do you recall whether he had dinner? Did he actually eat a meal, or did he just shake hands and leave? He had dinner. Yeah, I recall that he had dinner. It was a regular, not a long dinner, but it was a dinner. And so this dinner takes place in spring 2014, but then you get a call about this message from Yelena Baturina. So you have dinner. February 14th, then the same woman, Yelena Baturina, who was there, wires $3.5 million to one of Hunter's companies, Rosemont Seneca Thornton. Isn't that incredible? Russian oligarch has dinner with the vice president. Suddenly, $3.5 million gets transferred over to the other associates. And this is Devin Archer, again, making this conversation. This is direct evidence. He says, I was at the dinner. I observed Joe Biden being there, and that was a business meeting. And he can't articulate what they talked about, but anybody can make the inference that maybe that is circumstantial evidence. Okay, now we make the inference. One can come to a logical conclusion that a meeting happens and the money gets paid. So now we've got, in this one example, direct evidence in the form of testimony from Devin Archer, along with circumstantial evidence in the form of payments that ended up $3.5 million to Rosemont Seneca after the dinner meeting, right? It's clear evidence. Like, this is just criminal law basics 101. Every one of those Democrats in that stupid clip that we just played is dead wrong about it. They know that, but they're lying to us all. Here's another example. April 2015, Vice President dined with Hunter Biden's foreign business associates, including Burisma executive. Biden had dinner with Hunter's business associate called Vladimir Pozarski. Burisma was then being investigated by the prosecutor called Victor Shokin. Hey, let's talk about the second dinner. Archer says the second dinner. All right, the spring 2015 Cafe Milano. Devin, who was there? He says that dinner, I think we went over it before, but it was Vadim, Hunter, Joe, myself, Kareem. Joe and Hunter were there. There was a Greek Orthodox priest, maybe someone from World Food Program. And what did Joe at that dinner? What did Joe do at that dinner? Did he have dinner? How long was he there? Devin says, oh yeah, he had dinner. And there was on that one, I believe the first one, it was like a birthday dinner. And then the second was, I think we were supposed to talk about the World Food Program or something like that. Okay, so Hunter is dragging Joe around and he's introducing him to people who are a part of Hunter's business deals. Again, more direct evidence. This is not made up evidence. This is not third-hand evidence. This is Devin Archer, who has personal knowledge of what he witnessed, communicating it. Then Vice President had coffee with Hunter's Chinese business associate, Jonathan Lee of BHR, and he wrote a letter of recommendation for the daughter. Question to Devin. Did you ever witness Hunter asking Joe to do something for BHR or to help out Jonathan Lee, who was Hunter's business associate? Devin says, yeah, a college recommendation. She didn't get in. Yeah, probably the academics were like, what, a recommendation from Joe Biden? The plagiarist? No thanks. Sorry. For who? I think it was for his daughter to Georgetown. Didn't work. So they tried to squeeze her into Georgetown. So Hunter has a business associate. He uses daddy to get a college recommendation for her. Sure, daddy never met her, but he's just trying to get some grease from the vice president for his affairs. Another example, 2015, Vice President Biden hosted Hunter and Devin and other business associates at the official residence of the VP. Brought him into the White House, vice president's office. The topic of the discussion was filling the top seat in the United Nations. The Kazakhstani government official who wanted the UN position attended both dinners with then Vice President Biden. So now they're saying he's getting people appointed and bringing them to dinners. They said, and then by spring of 2015, you attended breakfast at the Naval Observatory. No. Do you remember that? No, the UN secretary was not present. Who was present? Well, there was a gentleman named Mark Holtzman, myself, Hunter, and the vice president was there. What was the discussion about? About who is going to be the next UN secretary general. Why were you involved in that? Why were you involved? Because Mark Holtzman was lobbying for Kareem Mazamov, but it didn't happen, right? So Hunter is getting paid to introduce people to get leverage, to get positions as ambassadors, right? He's selling access. And once again, this is a witness called Devin Archer who is there observing it all firsthand. He can testify about it. You could bring him right in and testify. It's literally direct evidence. And then you can fill in the gaps with circumstantial evidence and follow the money. We also know that there was a pseudonym used by Robert L. Peters. This one was when Vice President Biden was informed by his staff about a Ukraine call. Who was copied on that official email? Hunter Biden was. And Hunter was sitting on the board of the Ukrainian company Burisma. Now, these things I think are probably the most damning because it's just literally directly to PCI.gov. This is May 26, 2016. Joe Biden, still vice president. This is an email from John S. Flynn from the executive office of the vice president at at ovp.eop.gov, sending a letter, an email to Robert L. Peters. Okay, this is the fake Joe Biden email, robert.l.peters@pci.gov. And we know that this is just a government domain. So government operators were going in there and creating fake aliases for Joe Biden. So Joe Biden's team sends him an email. They say, hey, boss, 8:45 prep for a 9 a.m. phone call with Poroshenko. That's Ukraine. Then we're off to Rhode Island infrastructure event, then to Wilmington. Nate will have your draft remarks delivered later tonight with your press clips in the morning. Respectfully, signed off on, John. Guess who's copied on this email? Hunter Biden at Rosemont Seneca. So the White House Vice President's office is sending fake pseudonym emails to Joe, and then Hunter gets copied on it, and it's literally involving Ukraine, which is where Hunter Biden sits on the board. And this is direct evidence of involvement about discussions involving Ukraine. So this is more evidence that you would bring in to supplement your other claims. Now, if this was Big Fannie Willis doing any of this, right, each one of these would be an overt act and there would be a RICO case immediately. But of course, that's not happening right now. And so the Oversight Committee has assembled 20 different examples here, and there's just more and more. They go on and on and on. We've got emails, we've got transcripts, it's direct evidence, it's circumstantial evidence, and we know that the Biden crime family was involved in all of it. But for some reason, the Democrats can't figure it out. Here's another bit of evidence directly from Hunter Biden. He said to China, and Z, if I get a call or a text from anyone involved in this other than you, Zhang, or the chairman, I will make certain that between the man sitting next to me and every person he knows and my ability to forever hold a grudge, that you will regret not following my direction. That was in 2017, 7/30/2017. And so a lot more evidence about the involvement. Here's another one. I'm tired of this, Kevin. I can make $5 million salary at any law firm in America. If you think this is about money, it's not. The Bidens are the best I know at doing exactly what the chairman wants from this partnership. Let's not quibble over peanuts. And this is Hunter over to Gong Wang Dong. The Bidens, right? It's not just Hunter. Who are the Bidens without Joe Biden? There is no Bidens without Joe Biden. Rob Walker also had a recorded interview. He told agents that Joe Biden attended a CEFC meeting. That's the Hunter Chinese business deal. Why was Joe Biden attending a business meeting? And Rob Walker, he says that he has evidence of that. Let's see. Okay, Special Agent John Wilson, FBI. Did the VP ever show up at the CEFC meeting or anything like that? Even once he was out of office, Rob Walker says yes. Oh, there's more direct evidence of that. At times when he was in office, did you hear Hunter say that he was setting up a meeting with his dad with them while dad was still in office? Rob Walker, yeah. So Rob Walker, as a person who had a direct sense impression, did you hear with your own ears, with your organs, Hunter say something like he's setting up a meeting with his dad with them while his dad was still in office? Rob Walker says yes. Rob Walker is a witness who can provide direct evidence of Hunter explaining that Joe was involved. Now, that doesn't mean he's guilty. Joe would still have the presumption of innocence, and he could, of course, come out and rebut that and say, well, Hunter just said that. Hunter just made it up. Maybe Joe was never involved or not. But you would still, that's still circumstantial evidence, and you can still bring the case. This is direct evidence from Rob Walker. Combined with all of the other evidence, you could bring a case, right? It's clear evidence. Now, the fact that they just bury their heads in the sand is all intentional. More evidence here. Hunter's business partners visited the White House over 80 times when Biden was VP. There's more evidence there. Hunter's friend tells Congress that then VP Joe joined dozens of Son's business meetings on the phone. That's April 11, 2023. Here's more evidence for all the lefties who can't figure it out. That's Hunter Biden right there. That's Joe Biden right there. This is October 2015. Hunter arranged a video call with his Mexican business partners. The next month, then VP Joe hosted Hunter's literal Mexican business partners and his associate at the VP's official residence. There's photographs of this stuff. Daily Mail says Joe Biden entertained Hunter's Mexican billionaire business associates and even flew with his son to Mexico City on Air Force Two. Direct evidence of the travel, direct evidence of the associations in the form of videos and photographs, and it's in emails. And so over 20 now. In 2019, Hunter texted his daughter. He said, unlike Pop, meaning Joe Biden, I won't make you give me half of your salary. Unlike Pop, I'm not going to make you give half of your salary up. Duh. daughter, says to his daughter, I hope you all can do what I did and pay for everything for this entire family for 30 years. It's really hard, but don't worry. Unlike Pop, I won't make you give me half your salary. Okay, well, so that's more evidence. Now, again, Joe Biden could rebut all of this. All right, he could say, I never made him give me salary at all, not one time. That's his choice. And this is exactly what you could do in any criminal case, but they're not even interested in pursuing this because this apparently is not enough evidence. Hunter, I've been made to give half my salary to my daddy, Joe Biden. Now, what form is that? Who knows? We don't know. I really doubt that there are financial transactions into Joe Biden's bank accounts. What I would guess is there are other people paying for everything and Joe Biden just inherits the benefits. No money needs to change hands at all, but everything is paid for very conveniently. And that's what the situation has been for years. So 20 plus bits of evidence, direct evidence, circumstantial evidence, both attacking two different points of their argument that Joe Biden did nothing wrong, didn't obstruct anything. We now know that Gary Shapley is communicating that when they said that Merrick Garland promised that Shapley could file charges anywhere he wanted, turns out that is not true. These are Gary Shapley's notes, his handwritten notes that have now been released that show that when he met with David Weiss, look, he's communicating who's in the meeting. Tom's there. Gary's there. Look who this is. Sean's there. And David Weiss is in this meeting. He says, IRS meeting, refer to the DOJ OIG. Weiss stated right here, he is not the deciding person. Weiss, he is not the deciding person. Joe Biden and Merrick Garland through the DOJ told us that's not true. They said that he was the deciding person. He could bring charges in California or DC or anywhere, but not according to the whistleblower. And these are his contemporaneous notes from the day of the meeting. Said not going to change. Merrick Garland through Joe Biden lied to all of us. They obstructed this entire investigation. Shapley knew about it when he wrote down his meeting. Looks like October 9th, 11:15. More stuff here from his handwritten notes has been redacted, but report the income is what I see here, 2015. Archer something pays somebody. If approved, tax will grant discretion, but if not approved, if the California U.S. attorney says no, Weiss will request approval to proceed in California. California decision not determined or something. Weiss says he will request approval to proceed in CA. CA decision not determined. So, but he says, I'm not the person who is the deciding person, right? And so Gary Shapley and Joseph Ziegler and the other whistleblowers are out here showing us that there is massive obstruction that took place. Joe Biden is now shocked and saddened that his son has been indicted because they've been trying to prevent that from happening. They are going to continue to try to do that, but there is a mountain of evidence. This fake idea that there's not a shred is just propaganda from the left, thoroughly debunked. As more evidence comes out, we're going to see a lot more of it, and we'll see if they stand by their words. I doubt it. We'll continue to cover, my friends. Thank you for subscribing and hitting that like button wherever it is you're watching this, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the next one.